Here we go, right here, right here. Woo!
So 49 degrees north, celebrating opening day this morning. There you have it, the opening bell. So they'll have 3 lifts in operation. They're offering also early season discounts right now.
Mount Spokane also celebrated opening day today. Lift access will be limited to season pass holders, holiday campers, lessons, and previously scheduled tickets only at this time. Okay, with that, let's get straight to meteorologist Tom Sherry. And Tom, how much snow can we expect for the weekend?
Well, I think we're going to get 1 to 3 inches of snow in the Spokane area and 2 to 6 inches of snow in the valley locations up north where you see it shaded right there where it's a winter storm warning. Now, that is new. That means it's more certain it's going to happen during our 4 and 5 o'clock newscasts up in that area shaded in pink. That was still a winter storm watch. So a watch means maybe it'll happen. Warning means high confidence that we're going to get a lot of snow up there. Again, in the valleys, 2 to 6 inches of snow, in excess of 8 inches of snow, possibly at the higher elevations. Winter weather advisory in effect for us here in Spokane and Coeur d'Alene. We could get anywhere between 1 and 3 inches of snow. It is going to be a sloppy, wet mess, though, by the afternoon. The snow now beginning to fall. You can see it moving in through the Cascades and on the east slopes of the Cascades. Still a rain event over on the coastal regions. It's cold, folks. We're at 20 degrees right now, and it's not windy now, but tomorrow we could see wind gusts up to 30 miles per hour because warm air is going to follow the snow. So get this, morning snow becoming sloppy in the afternoon. Probably by this time Saturday night, it's going to be rain with a daytime high of 39. Sunday morning's low also stays above freezing. So another sloppy day and a high of 39, and then more snow on the way next week. So it's a rain snow event for us here in Spokane. Mostly snow, though, to those valleys north and east of Spokane. More on that coming up in a few minutes.
All right, Tom, thank you. And what a difference a day makes. Yesterday, we were stuck, stopped, and sliding down the hills. All that snow and freezing temperatures turned the roads into literal ice rinks.
It was a mess out there. Spokane police responded to more than 100 accidents in the course of the night last night. SPD also issued an emergency alert last night requesting people limit their driving.
Spokane Police Department is requesting residents to limit their driving, if at all possible, due to extremely icy road conditions.
It was just an unprecedented move by police.
Yeah, SPD says they've never done that before, issuing a citywide alert to stay off the roads, but they said the conditions last night warranted that move. So KREM 2's Amanda Rowley pressed the city today about its response last night and also asked how it's preparing for this weekend.
Spokane police responded to more than 100 crashes last night. That's not hard to believe because everywhere our crews went, the roads were incredibly slick. So I asked the city of Spokane today, how did this happen?
Unexpected slick roads made last night's evening commute an absolute mess. Take Grand Boulevard, for example. When we reached St. John's Cathedral, we found 5 cars blocking the northbound lane. Further down the hill, an STA bus slid off the road. Also, along Freya and 16th, several people slid off the road. Some drivers even gave up and left their cars overnight. In fact, the roads were so bad, Spokane Alert sent out a phone message advising drivers to stay off the roads.
Spokane Police Department is requesting residents to limit their driving, if at all possible, due to extremely icy road conditions.
Spokane City spokesperson Brian Coddington told me today crews were on the roads all day yesterday. They started with de-icer. Then, he says, as snow continued accumulating and temperatures dropped, the de-icer became ineffective. So, crews switched to laying a granular material in the evening hours. Why wait till the evening when everybody's already making their commute?
Oh, to be clear, we were out. The crews were out working all day long yesterday.
Do you think the city responded to the best of its ability yesterday?
Yeah, like I said, the crews were out ahead of time and they were out throughout the duration of the evening last night. Sometimes you get conditions that are just right or just wrong. In this case, where the weather's very, very cold, the streets are still relatively warm from the season, and you get precipitation that comes down and it creates this perfect storm of icy conditions.
We're expecting more snow this weekend. Brian Coddington told me right now crews are in a 20-hour response, and they will continue to track the conditions heading into the weekend and can shift to a 24-hour response if it is warranted. Reporting from the South Hill, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
And drivers in Washington and Idaho can expect to see more law enforcement on the roads over the next 2 weeks. Both states will have extra patrols on the highways in an effort to combat drunk and drugged driving. So the Washington State Patrol and Idaho State Police will both have impaired driving emphasis patrols out from December 17th through December 31st. Those troopers will be watching for drivers under the influence of alcohol and/or drugs.
And whether traveling by road or by plane, the best way to ensure smooth trips during the upcoming holiday season is to plan ahead and be prepared. The Washington State Department of Transportation is urging all travelers to know before you go. So here are several tips for planning a stress-free trip. Well, before leaving, check with WSDOT travel maps to view alerts or restrictions such as past closures or delays. This year's staffing challenges may mean some highways will have more snow or ice for longer periods of time. For the most immediate updates, just follow WSDOT's social media pages on Twitter and on Facebook. Also carry chains and other winter weather supplies in your car just in case of an emergency. And as always, give yourself extra time and slow down.
And if you are traveling at all this weekend, make sure you take it extra slow and be prepared. You can actually text us the word snow to 509-448-2000 and we'll send a link to you that has the current forecast and past conditions right to your phone.
In other news this evening, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced today that it supports a so-called test-to-stay practice in schools. Essentially, students who have a close contact with a positive COVID case would be able to stay in school rather than quarantining if they test negative after the exposure. More specifically, if a close contact does not have symptoms and tests negative at least twice in a week, they can continue with in-person learning. So today I reached out to Spokane Public Schools to ask if they plan to adopt that test-to-stay policy. A spokesperson told me the district is actually piloting the test-to-stay model at several schools right now, and they hope to offer it at all schools in the coming months, depending how the piloting is going. So more to come on this story.
And Pfizer says its kid-sized vaccine has actually failed to produce the expected immunity response in younger kids. The trials show that the 2-dose vaccine did not provide strong immune response for kids ages 2 to 5. The company says it will now amend the trial to add a 3rd dose. And if that 3-dose study is successful, they could submit that for emergency use authorization in the first half of 2022. Well, the number of new Omicron cases in Washington is doubling every 60 hours. So at that pace, Omicron is predicted to be the dominant strain in our state in a day or two.
But how do we know how fast the virus is spreading? Glenn Farley from our sister station spent the day at the University of Washington's medical school, which is doing just that.
We're here in the clinical virology lab at the University of Washington.
His name is Dr. Alex Greninger. He's the assistant director here at UW Medicine's clinical virology lab. Chances are good if you've had a COVID test in Washington, it's come here for analysis.
We have a lot of automation.
And lots of people. Before COVID, 70 people worked in virology at the UW's medical school. With COVID, more than 200 do this kind of work. And this lab complex now covers 2 floors. Everywhere there are machines. Key step 1 is test positive or negative for COVID.
We're getting 500 positives a day. Probably tomorrow and the next day might be over 6. Well, we could be up to over 600 or 700 positive a day.
That includes both the Delta and the Omicron variant. A second test trying to flag Omicron early by looking for a missing gene on the spike protein assigned the letter S.
The S gene target failures, I mean, you can hem and haw about this percentage point or that percentage point, but they're pretty spot on, honestly, at this point, especially with its growth, right?
The lab will then try to confirm by performing a full sequencing of the genetic code of a percentage of samples, but can't process them all. And Delta's days as the dominant strain appear almost over.
And the percentage of those likely to be Omicron are?
I'd say about 50% right now.
50%?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Maybe even higher, yeah. It was 37% on samples that were collected Monday.
He expects the lab to soon be processing record daily numbers of tests. Last Wednesday alone, they got 14,000 samples. Cases of Omicron doubling every 2.5 days.
We expect it to be the dominant strain by now/this weekend. And the question then becomes if it's, does it completely sweep and take out all of Delta? Or is there any way, sometimes, some of the models, depending on the immune evasion, they could coexist.
Glenn Farley, KREM 2 News.
Guess we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, my goodness. Fingers crossed for the best potential outcome,
yeah,
right? My gosh.
Also today, Governor Jay Inslee announcing that he is now delaying Washington's long-term care tax. Why he decided to leave those deductions until at least 2023.
Service work is what drives me. Service work is the greatest secret that's right in front of our noses.
And Macklemore recently sat down with our sister station in Seattle. He's talking sobriety and family and what keeps him ticking. We'll check in with him later in the show.